Hi, this is Dan Bagniuk, and you're listening to Awaken Nation with Brad Zollis.
A huge shift is taking place on planet Earth. People seem to be waking up. Tired of the way things used to be, they are creating something brand new and changing the world we live in. My name is Brad Zollis, and I get to sit down with the next generation of idea makers, the disruptors, and the game changers. Everyday people, just like you and me, from all over, who are doing amazing things to Awakened Nation.
Hey, everybody. I have a great guest on today, Dan Bagniuk. You're going to love this young man because he discovered his passion actually by accident, just working jobs and hustling. And, Dan, your generation gets a bum rap sometimes with their work ethic, but you are a hustler, a mover, a shaker. You land from one place to the next. And we're going to talk a little bit about your journey and your ambition. I'm very impressed. But welcome to Awaken Nation.
Thank you. Thank you. It's a pleasure to be on here.
You're welcome. I'm going to read your bio real quick because this is it. We're in a day and age where copywriting, video presence, you got to be marketing yourself all the time. And if you don't get the words right, if you don't get your unique selling proposition correct, you can miss the mark. And Dan's the guy who can help you out. You ready to get started, my friend?
Let's do it. Let's do it.
After writing copy for names like Brian Page, Bastiaan Slot, Adam Lyons, and many other 7 and 8 figure coaches and consultants, Dan Bagniuk created Hidden Profits, an email marketing agency helping business owners uncover hidden profit centers and sales channels to collect an extra $500,000 to $1 million per year. Pay attention, folks. Bring your pen and paper for this episode. Uh, Dan, welcome to Awaken Nation.
Thank you. Thank you.
Now, you didn't start out, at Halloween dressing up as a copywriter. Am I correct? You started out studying applied kinesiology, and also you were helping with a painting company when you were like 19. Let's just dig in and start at the beginning.
Yeah, the whole journey towards my entrepreneurship was a complete accident. I grew up playing hockey as any Canadian, and I feel like honestly Eastern European kid just enjoys to do. Always had visions of playing pro, had those kinds of dreams. But at 17, I actually at 13, I tweaked my back. But then at 17, that's when the ligament in my L5, so in my spine, it gave out. And yeah, I tore it. Couldn't play hockey anymore. Had to take the entire year off. So lost my entire identity. I mean, as a 17-year-old, that was my entire identity. It's just hockey as an athlete. So it was one of the sort of toughest emotional years that I went through, and I had no other option but to just focus on school. So I didn't know what I wanted to do because I was kind of riding on the fact that I'm going to take off, I'm going to go play pro, I'm going to play hockey somewhere. But the only thing that I ever enjoyed, was sports, was health. So I feel like as any teenager, you're given a wide array of options of jobs, and you're like, just pick one and then go study whatever you need to study to get that job. So my vision was sort of just becoming a physiotherapist. But the summer, actually the winter of my grade 12 year, right before I graduated high school, I was already admitted to university and everything. I got a door-to-door job for a painting franchisee here in my city, in Canada. So I started in January selling exterior painting door-to-door in the winter. So it was not fun. It was minus 20, minus 30 degrees outside. So yeah, I was just kind of at the time I was 17 years old, just going door to door, just making a little bit of money. And then as spring and summer started to come along, there was so the franchising company I worked with, they had a window cleaning division. And so my painting manager referred me to the window cleaner she knew because he also needed a door-to-door marketer. So I was working 2 door-to-door jobs that summer. And it was pretty good. I was making decent money, especially since, the window cleaning side was a lot easier to sell door to door.
Yeah.
But towards sort of maybe midway through the summer, towards the end, the window cleaning franchisee, he reached out to me. Maybe I was maybe only working with him for a month, and he reached out and he's like, "Hey, have you ever considered running your own franchise?" And I was like, "Absolutely not. I see what you guys do. It's way too hard. This is too stressful. So I'm good."
Yeah.
So I kept working, kept knocking doors, and then I had my weekly meeting with my painting manager. During that meeting, she asked me a question. Have you ever considered running your own franchise? And I asked her, I was like, did you and the window cleaner talk? She's like, no, why? And I told her, I was like, you both asked me the exact same question within just days apart. Um, and she thought it was pretty crazy. She thought it was kind of funny how that worked out. But to me, it wasn't as, it was more crazy than it was funny because I was like, wow, this is like, I've never had this in my life where two people, two of my managers especially, offered me such like a big position because it's also kind of rare for door-to-door like employees to rise up to a franchising opportunity because we're part-time workers. It's common
Right.
for window cleaners or painters to rise up because they work full-time. They kind of know more about the business, know more about the actual fulfillment. So, I always sort of attribute that as like a God-given moment where it was just kind of a sign, it was a sign to try something new. So I couldn't pass up that opportunity. So I was like, if two people are reaching out to me, maybe they see something in me. So I said yes. And I remember telling my parents, and both my parents were not on board. My mom told me to basically just focus on studies, to go back and run the franchise when I graduate university. Very classic Eastern European mother.
Yes, I know that well. My
Yeah,
father. Yeah.
yeah. And then my dad also gave me a little bit of tough love at the time too. Quote, I don't know why you're going to do this because you're going to get nothing out of it. So I was like, wow, okay. The only people that supported me were my girlfriend and my sister with my brother-in-law. So I just kind of, it was funny because I had to get their signature as well because I just turned 18 at the time,
Mhm.
but they still needed to sign off. So I just kind of talked them into it somehow. And yeah, basically like long story short there, that's when I started, instead of going door to door, I was in university in another city 2 hours away from the city I operated in. So I would, after class in university, I'd come home and then I would cold call for 3 hours, Monday to Friday. I would leave, actually, no, sorry, not Monday to Friday, Monday to Thursday, because Friday night I would leave to go back to my home city where I was operating in. And
Mhm.
then from Saturday to Sunday, I would be doing estimates and then I would bust down 2 hours Sunday night so that I could attend classes during the week. And that continued on from January up until April when I finished my university class. I was taking a full course load as well. My GPA tanked hard the second semester because I was running the business on the side, but I was able to set up quite a few jobs for the spring for exterior painting. And then, yeah, just basically that's where everything started. I had to hire a couple door-to-door people myself, had to train them up. I hired six painting, so six painters, so three crews. And yeah, it was the roughest year I've had because as a 19-year-old, my leadership skills were non-existent. So my painting crews one by one kind of dwindled. Had to fire one of them. The other ones just kind of up and left. And then the last one, they left on kind of not so good terms. But I don't blame any of them just because I just didn't take the right approach at all. So it was just one of the most stressful summers I've ever had.
Mhm.
Just working 16, 18-hour days. And yeah, just sort of taking on that. I almost joke to my friends and some of the people that have ran franchises with me is that like it was one of those sort of traumatic experiences, but it was like a good trauma where it taught me a
Yeah.
lot. But sometimes when I think back to it, it almost like I almost a little scarred from it. But that's actually what got me into the online space because one, I found out about entrepreneurship and what it's all about. But two, I found out that people are actually making money online. So
Yeah.
once that season ended, that's when I transitioned online.
I love your story simply because I'm a baby boomer. So we That's how we started out, door-to-door sales a lot of times. I wound up at Hershey Park as a barker. I would yell and, hey, come on up, give it a try in the games division. And I remember I did that for 2 summers, hustled like crazy, made good money over the summer, worked crazy hours, like we're talking 9 in the morning till 10 and 11 o'clock at night. Uh, I'd get one day off a week, maybe if I wanted it. And they got around the labor laws when I was 16 by giving me bonus hours. And so that hustle, I think, trains us on how the business works. But then I wanted to go to college, so I kept asking, hey, I'd like to become an assistant manager. That was the first rung up from being in a booth to getting out of a booth. And like you're going to laugh at this. I was an 18-year-old trying to manage other 18, 19, and 21-year-olds who were in college, some of them. Some of them were my peers. And I remember on a Saturday morning, they all ganged up on me to tell me off that I played favorites. And the only thing you have when you're that age is ego and a little bit of experience. So I just looked at everybody and go, they said, you play favorites. And I go, you damn right I play favorites, and I told them why, because I only used enthusiastic workers who backed me up. And looking back now, I realized I was 18. I probably sounded like, you're darn right. I play favorites, because you don't have that leadership quality yet. And I'm glad you talked about that, because that is what separates the amateur from the ambitious who wants to be a professional. So I take my hat off to you for that. Now, you were working at an agency. What were some of the things, because you didn't start out in email marketing, you were just writing copy. Am I correct?
Yeah, so I actually, so I didn't even start off writing copy. I went into the high ticket sales industry first. It was, and even then, that was kind of an accident. Like when I transitioned online, I just had no clue what was going on. I was just kind of going through the motions, buying different courses.
Right.
Things just weren't really clicking. And then the way I got into the agency is same thing, was a bit of a fluke, just a lot of like elbow grease, I want to say, because I went through the high ticket sales, like, made okay money with the company I worked with. And this is like right at the peak of COVID during the summer of 2020. That was also the time when I decided to drop out of university, because I was like, you know what, some of this stuff is working, and I really do not want to become a physiotherapist after knowing what's possible online. Because the whole purpose of me even going or having, I guess, the drive I had with online entrepreneurship was because I wanted to be with my family. I mean, like we just talked before the recording, is that immigrant parents, they immigrate to provide, their kids with a better life. So my dad spent a lot of time working out of town, and it was just pretty much me and my mom that I just grew up with my mom. And I remember being a kid, always sort of thinking, it's like, this is not going to be my family. I'm going to make sure that when I do have a family, I'm always available. I'm always there to help actually raise my kids and see them grow up. So that, like, as soon as I dropped out of university, it was like a no-brainer to me. I had enough money, thankfully, saved up from the high ticket closing gigs I had to pay off my loans. And yeah, I was just kind of going all in. And I met this coach who helped me increase my sales. He had some good stuff to teach, but he set up his own little opportunity of like, hey, we're starting a sales agency where I'm looking for head coaches that can train closers, and then we'll place those closers. And then he basically, told us there was 5 of us head coaches that got brought on. I was one of them. And he told us that there'd be these really, great payment structures and whatnot. So I was like, wow, this is sick. My life's about to take off. Long story short there, it wasn't actually like a built out brand. The guys sold a bunch of people in. We promised them a call a week. They basically got a call a month. We were the 5 of us head coaches, which were just a bunch of young 20-year-olds, naive 20-year-olds. We were building out the entire business for him. He was very much hands off with it. All he was doing was the sales, and we were building out everything else with no experience, very little knowledge or wisdom at all. And we were running the training calls too. Like you would think that the expert would run the training calls, the people that he sold, but no, we were running the calls. And it got to a point where one person reached out to us. He's like, hey, like, can I get a refund? Because you guys have not, held up your end of the deal. And I talked with the other head coaches and we all agreed like, yeah, let's do it. So because we had access to the Stripe, which once again shows just how much we're in charge of the entire business, I went in and processed the refund because,
Yeah.
it makes sense. Like we were only doing one call a month. And that was a big no-no, apparently. The main coach came at me, put me on blast in front of the entire community saying that, there's no refund policy. Dan messed up. He shouldn't have done that. He made a massive mistake. He made big claims that there was a clear no refund policy. But when I went back to the recordings that he had with everyone that he sold, never once was it mentioned that there was a refund policy or that there was a no refund policy.
Right.
So yeah, that kind of left a bitter taste in my mouth. And it got to a point where us head coaches started to fall off because none of us were making money.
Right.
By month 5, we were all, working pretty much full time, making very little to no money. My savings were dwindling. So I was like, okay, I need to figure something out. And it got so bad that I was actually developed like crippling anxiety working with this guy because we would jump on Zoom calls where I would do the work and he would just kind of watch me. Like I would share my screen, he would just watch me sitting on his phone. And then if I mess up, there would be like critiques or, just negative comments thrown my way. It would never be in a helpful way of like, oh, here, let me show you how to do this. Like, here you go, figure it out. So yeah, it got to a point where by month 5, I had enough, messaged the guy, I'm leaving. At the time I was, in counseling as well. And it was hilarious because like the next counseling session I had, I told my counselor, I was like, I feel great. Like I have no anxiety. So it was just that one experience. So that was my last counseling session. I felt completely free, still broke as hell, but had more experience now, a little bit more wisdom. And basically like a couple months later, that's when the entire business burnt down. People started asking for refunds. And the worst part about the situation is I actually paid the guy to become a head coach. So we paid him to work for free. And I hopped on a call with him a few months later. I was like, hey, like, can I get a refund? Because honestly, like we work for free. I got nothing out of this. It was just 5 months of my time. And that same thing, that's when it turned into a lot of like manipulation of like, you should have paid me more for the time I gave you. It's your fault that all this is happening because you processed the one refund. Yeah, it was a pretty ugly call. Long story short, I didn't get my money back. I did the dispute, but even then that like didn't really work because it was so late. It was like,
yeah,
it was 8 months later. But April of 2021, so a few weeks after I left that sort of sales position, the one benefit that came out of that is that one coach told me to get into email marketing, to practice it, because I kept bouncing around different roles. So he's like, okay, you're now going to be an email marketer, figure it out. So I started practicing, researching, and even when I left, I was still kind of writing copy because I just enjoyed it. I wasn't getting paid. I was just doing it for myself. And I realized that that's going to be the lifestyle that I wanted to live because I didn't want to sit on calls all day. I actually wanted freedom, which is, once again, I want to be able to spend time with my future family and want to be able to spend time with my future kids. So yeah, it got to a point where I was so engrossed in the copywriting scene that I decided to, once again, go all in on that. And I withdrew all of the money I had in terms of like savings, investments, stocks, whatever, retirement, anything that I had, and invested into a payment plan for this program. And that was my first like transition to copywriting. So I basically, once again, took out what little money I had left and just put my back up against the wall. Didn't even have enough to pay off the entire program. And yeah, just started cold outreaching people. So a lot of this like sort of door-to-door cold sales type stuff. I was sending like 50 Instagram video DMs to people, offering free copywriting samples. And the problem was like a lot of people were telling me, it's like, hey, like, I like your copy, you're writing good copy, but nobody was paying. It was incredibly frustrating because people were telling me I'm talented, but I was like, okay, like I don't care about your compliments. Like I have no money, so please pay me for that. And yeah, so this went on for 4 months, and me and my girlfriend decided to take a trip in the summer. Before then, I actually picked up a bartending job as well to actually pay off the program because I was just making no money. So I was bartending on the side, trying to find clients. Me and my girlfriend decided to take a trip to Vancouver, and we drove around the University of British Columbia campus, so the university there. And I started to get cold feet. I was like, maybe I should just go back to university. Like things just started not working out. I could just get a software engineering degree, make decent money, and just live a normal life.
Right.
So I reached out to one of the guys I met when I was doing high ticket sales, who has like a software engineering degree and had a gig with Microsoft, but he started his own agency. But I reached out to him anyways. I was like, hey man, like I know you have this degree. How was it? Like, what should I know? And this is kind of the second God-given moment that I think of is he told me, like, first thing he told me is like, don't do it. You are not the personality type that's gonna, thrive or enjoy this type of work. I know that like things are hard right now. Just keep going. Like I promise you, things are gonna pay off. And during like the 4 month period, he was actually the only person that paid me. It was a little bit to like write some Instagram captions.
Right.
But like I made a little bit of money, but he was kind of like my first sort of freelance client, but also just he was the guy that basically encouraged me to keep going when I was literally about to give up. So I stuck with it. I was like, okay, I'll see what happens. And then shortly after, I got my first gig at an agency that was paying me a little bit of money, but this was like the first time I was making consistent income. And then a couple months later, I picked up a second agency gig where basically like my income really blew up. I was 21, 21 at the time. And I was able to actually quit my bartending job. And that's when I was like, wow, okay, like this is really starting to finally pick up after 2.5 years of just trying to find trying to find solid ground. So the first thing I did was I booked me and my girlfriend a all-inclusive vacation to like Mexico. So just to kind of celebrate. And because she was like by my side the entire time, even during like sort of the depths of despair, she always encouraged me and like never lost faith.
Right.
So yeah, that's kind of how I transitioned to the agency scene.
I love what I'm hearing here. And for those of you who are listening, there's a lot of scam artists in the industry, this high-end ticket sales stuff. And I love the fact, Dan, that you stood in your integrity. You stood and you're sitting there and you're getting frustrated. And it's the old saying, how do you get rid of the pain in your side? Well, take the thorn out. And you did. And now you can clearly navigate and see things. I always find this funny. You mentioned this in the beginning, being an immigrant's kid or, the next generation of an immigrant family, there is this work ethic that we can look back on and say, thank God that was instilled in us, because my father was the first generation born here in the United States from Hungary. And so, my dad wasn't sitting there going, do you need a helmet, buddy? He wasn't, asking me how I was feeling. We had a very European way of my dad raising me. And so that work ethic for me started at a very young age, where I had my first paper route at like 15. And anybody who's had a paper route knows you deliver in rain, sleet, and snow, and it doesn't matter. And then the entrepreneurial bug hit me at 16. Like I fell into it. And so I'm just, I love your story. I love what you're talking about and how you fell into copywriting. And I have to ask you this. What did you discover? And I want people to hire you. I want anybody who needs copy, needs, a strategy for reaching new and potential clients. I want you to reach out to Dan. But let's ask this. What are the three parts of your secret sauce that you feel all copy must have?
Ooh, question. I haven't really sat and thought about sort of the three parts of secret sauce, but like the one thing that and it's interesting because I've gotten multiple, I guess, hints of this today is I think we've talked about this in the past, is just the idea of being able to indoctrinate your audience and be able to get them to choose you over anyone else that's in the industry. Like you said, there's a lot of scam artists. There's a lot of great people as well. I'm not saying that, industry is all bad, but it's like, it gets to a point where these leads have all these options. It's like, what's the difference between this guy's offer and, this other dude's offer? And I think it just comes down to so the indoctrination part, it comes down to being able to share your story and have omnipresence. So I guess that's, I think that's two of, sort of the secret sauce. But I think those two, like, maybe I'll think of a third one as we talk. But from all of the clients that we've worked with, the story is what made the biggest difference. Because the one problem is that, for example, one of our clients, I'm talking to the sales manager, and we got on a conversation where one of the things that their closer was asking is like, why do you think, client name is the right person to work with, or is the right person for you? Something around those lines. And I asked him to like sort of give me more details on that. And he told me, he was like, well, if you were to ask someone that wants to work with Tony Robbins, why do you think Tony Robbins is like the right person to, for you? People would come up with all the reasons possible. They would start selling you on why they should work with Tony Robbins, not the other way around.
Right.
And that's the thing with right now, it's like, I don't really believe too much in saturation, but there's just so many people out here promoting kind of similar stuff. But the only difference maker is really just going to be the authority that you, and I guess the position that you have in the industry. And once again, that all comes back to story. So
Right.
there's two clients, one client where we started working with them in September, and then within 100 days, we were able to bring in 700K, like $703,000, something like that, just from email sales.
Wow.
And we had our own little strategy, because the thing is they didn't even use their email list at all to generate clients, to generate sales. They used it for some affiliate offers, but weirdly enough, they weren't using it to promote their own offers. And it's the name that's behind it is pretty big. So this guy's brand is big. He has respect and authority in the industry. But the problem with that is that these people start to look like gods. It's very hard to relate. And it's very hard to sort of find any reason to go with them aside from like, oh, they're really successful.
Right.
But if you can't find like, oh, if you can't see yourself in someone else, it's very hard to actually build that trust. But what we did is, first of all, we obviously, re-engaged their entire email list. But the content we really focused on was, I heavily focused on the story of how he was brought up. And it was very sort of rags to riches style story, just same thing. Parents hopped from state to state, city to city, trying to find jobs. He was wearing like hand-me-down clothes or whatever. They were pretty much homeless during a period. Despite all that, he was able to create some kind of success. But even then, during the 2008 crash, he lost everything. Talked about a story of how he, went to a Wendy's drive-through in a beater car because the IRS took away his, nice car that he had when he was successful. And he had to dig in the cushions to just find like 40 cents to afford a Wendy's burger. And it's that kind of stuff that sticks out. Same thing for one of our other clients. His, mom died when he was young. Dad, same thing, just like really hard worker, had to now provide for two sons. So he was kind of on his own. And like same thing during his teens, because of his mother's death, because of just the direction his life was taking, he was like depressed, socially anxious, addicted to video games. But it's like sharing those things is what makes the entire difference. Because if you can see yourself in the person you want to work with, or if you can sort of present that as a coach, so many people are going to relate to you and have faith and proof that they're going to be able to do it too.
Right.
That's the biggest thing. Another quick story I'll share is that when I transitioned from the agency space into like freelancing, I was comparing between two coaches. Really, I found one coach who seemed to have like a good offer. They knew that they were, once again, super successful. But then there was this other person that I've heard of before, who's still my coach to this day, but I listened to podcasts, heard his story then, knew he was kind of around the same age as me. And I just knew he was way ahead of me. So I was like, okay, this person also knows something that I don't. But now it's stuck between two people. The difference that, made me switch from one person to the other was I read the post that basically this guy went through a very similar situation to me, where he worked with a well-known guru, got paid very little, was working crazy hours, was left, had to get therapy to undo some of the sort of like, issues that happened during the working relationship. And all I could think back to was like my sales. I was like, holy crap, like this is me. I can
Right.
see myself in this. And because this guy was close to my age, because he like was, successful, I was like, I could do this too. Like if he went through this, I could do it too. So I went with him. I bought his core offer. Despite barely being able to afford it, still bought it, went through it, ended up same thing, achieving the results that were exactly promised, like went above and beyond. And then after the 3-month program, I just reached out to him. I was like, hey, do you do one-on-one coaching? Because I want to work with you. He's like, yeah, let's
Nice.
do it. And then that was September of 2022. I am still his one-on-one coaching client. So it's like,
That's
yep.
I love this. A lot of people in this day and age, they want to be successful. And I see a lot of people who maybe they had a lifetime of working for someone else, and now suddenly they want to be an entrepreneur, or they fall in love with the image they see online. And you just proved what the test is. What's the litmus test for success? And that is you get results. It's that simple. Get results. And I love this. You lean forward, you put the money on the table once you realized what you were getting, the value add that you were getting. Um, Fantastic. And I do, I hear your secret sauce in what you're talking about. Uh, Becoming a master storyteller, I think, is probably one of the most powerful things that you can do in this day and age. For me, it started out with the visual part because I'm a graphic designer. But then it morphed slowly between my speaking career and doing the show and things like this. It morphed into the speaking word. And some of my favorite stand-up comedians are master storytellers. Do you consider yourself a master storyteller at this point, or do you feel like you're just warming up?
Yeah, I always feel like I'm just warming up. I'll never probably consider myself a master. One thing I do want to add on to this is that yes, the skill of telling stories is super important. One thing that is very difficult is like sharing your own story is actually much harder than people expect. Like it's easy for me to say here, be like, yeah, just get super vulnerable, tell your deepest, darkest secrets, and
Yeah.
all these sort of rags to rich stories. But it can be so hard because you're still so emotionally attached to some of the memories or to some of the conditioning or programming that came from those stories. Like for one of our clients, it's funny because he came up to me at one point during our meeting. He's like, you're kind of like my therapist. I just tell you stuff, but then you pay me money because it's like this stuff for him. And the thing is, and just recently he also shared with me is that when you grow to a certain point, certain authority level, certain status, it gets harder to actually share the true authentic version of yourself because you have so much more to lose. Like you don't want to get canceled. You're afraid of leads potentially just canceling calls because
Right.
I don't agree with your point of view, or just completely basically burning down your business because you decide to be yourself and just share yourself in a raw way.
Right.
So I can 100% understand that, and that's why it's I'm not sitting here and saying that I'm a master storyteller and whatnot. The key here is just I'm actually able to get these stories out because the way we structure it is for a lot of our clients, we'll hop on like a weekly call with them and I'll just chit chat back and forth, kind of like what
Right.
we're doing right now. Very friendly, very like, just it's super chill. And that's when I'm able to ask the questions that starts to pull out one, the story, but two, the actual details
Yeah.
of the story. And then I'm able to share it as the kind of like a third party on their behalf. And they don't have to worry about it because
Right.
there's no filter. For me, like I'm not emotionally attached to a story. I will go as deep and as vulnerable as I can because I know that stuff works. But for them, it's a lot scarier to do it
Yeah.
because of that emotional attachment and that fear.
Also, I think there's a piece of this where they think if they are too vulnerable, people won't want to do business with this person. And I've seen it before where people don't really know what their origin story is. Many moons ago, I put together a multi-author book that was all millennial stories. And these were all millennials that had become business owners, or they went out and they did something extraordinary. And one of the women, we were doing conference calls with each author. We do 3 or 4 once a week, and they tell their origin story. And I'd prep them before they started writing their chapter. And this one woman came on, and she was working in Coeur d'Alene, Idaho. She had created a salon for women. She had built her business up, and she had like 11 employees. The She ran for office. I mean, she had achieved all this amazing status and success and everything. And it all sounded great. It sounded wonderful. And for those of you who are listening, she painted the picture of uber success. I mean, she was not only a woman entrepreneur, but she was raising her daughter, a single mother, hustling, getting this business off the ground. And finally, I asked the question that was the solid gold question, Dan. You know this when I tell you this. Um, I said to her, I said, "Well, what made you turn your life around? Because I know you didn't grow up this way and you had to struggle." And she said to me, and everybody on the conference call was like, "What?" She says, "I decided to turn my life around after I was sitting in a jail cell after stabbing my husband." Yeah, so that's the same reaction everybody else had. They were like, "What?" They leaned in, and it turned out that her husband was military, and every time he came back from Iraq, he would beat her up badly, and to the point where they had to call the cops. And she realized she had to defend herself one night so badly that it wound up, her in jail, even though he, did this constantly. And she said, "You know what? For the sake of my daughter, I got to get out, go somewhere else, and start over." And that's what she did. And that is her origin story to this day. That pure authenticity, being purely authentic. And do you find that some people BS the "I'm authentic" stuff? They come back from a Gary Vaynerchuk seminar and they start swearing, and they never swore before. Now suddenly they're this guru, and it's just not true. Do you find a lot of that fake authenticity happening these days?
Um, I mean, I can see it happening. I honestly don't really pay too much attention to it, but I don't blame people because it just goes, it's like you said, it is fake, but it just goes back to the same fears. Like, why would you put yourself out there? Like it's so much easier to try and position yourself as like someone else and then, fake it till you make it type thing, but it just doesn't work. I have probably noticed it, but at the end of the day, people eventually realize, and especially your clients or, even your family members, like if they see your brand, they're like, this is not you. Or like, they'll
Right.
go to an event and you meet the person, they're a completely different person, like when you're one-on-one, but then in a group, it's like they're a guru now. And yeah, like I can see it happening, unfortunately, but that's just like we're all designed to try and fit in at the end of the day. So
It's true. How do we get a hold of you, Dan? Where do we go?
yeah, I'm primarily on Facebook. So you can find me on Facebook. I'm also on Twitter. Those are pretty much the two platforms I'm on. So
Sure.
yeah, just reach out to me there. I mean, I post every day on both
Yeah.
platforms, so you can read exactly what I'm talking about. Yeah, so just reach out, say hi. More than happy to chat, especially if you guys need help with.
Yeah, you're pretty relatable. I started watching you post a couple of things, and then you said, "Hey, I want to do more shows." And I think somebody tagged me, and you were like real chill. It was great to connect with you. So reach out to Dan, folks. Dan Bagniuk, Bagniuk. So we're the kids who hung out with the other foreign kids because our English was so. I hung out with all the Greek kids in my neighborhood, and then when we were riding bike all day, at some point we would go to someone's restaurant because everybody had a Greek restaurant just about. So that's what happens. I want to ask you this. I'm sure your parents, although they didn't understand it, they're kind of proud of you now. Am I right?
So yes, short answer, yes. Once again, Eastern European parents or Eastern European mother. My mom still sometimes gives me a little bit of a hard time to go back to university. It's just
Yeah.
that traditional sort of upbringing. But yeah, being able to just, I have a much deeper relationship with my dad now, because
Yeah.
of one, I just have much more respect for the struggle he went through to provide for us. And also he's also kind of sort of anti-traditional path,
Right.
9 to 5 type thing. Because once again, like as an immigrant, you just have to figure it out. And it's
Yeah.
like a lot of immigrants actually end up being better off than people that were actually born in the country. And yeah, it's they are proud. My sister, my brother-in-law, like they've mentioned it multiple times as well. My girlfriend's parents, like it's gratifying for sure. I'm not kind of getting complacent with that though. I've gone complacent multiple times, but I'm the type of personality that, I mean, once again, I also immigrated and the blood of immigrant parents, but it's like grateful but never satisfied. So
Yeah.
I remember hearing the story that, my dad coming here, working 2 jobs, being a security guard, delivering pizzas, my sister having to do the same at 13, just to like make some money while we were living in subsidized housing. And then, yeah, my dad somehow was able to just find his way, get into a very profitable sector, which is the oil and gas sector here in Canada,
Yeah.
are making good money. And, now they're well off. And I was telling my girlfriend, it's like, it's actually kind of crazy because like my brother-in-law played semi-professional hockey in Russia, and here in the West. And it's the same thing. Like they set up businesses that now take care of them and their kids. And my dad and my
Yeah.
mom are completely fine because of the frugality my dad had, growing up. So it's just, yeah, for me at this point, it's sort of carrying that torch, maintaining that sort of standard, being able to transfer some of these values to my kids. Just like kind of not to be too cliche, but like really just sort of creating a different trajectory for my family,
Right.
and just working a job. It's like, hey, like you could start whatever business you want. Like, you can take control of your life instead of having
Yeah.
to traditional path and not being afraid of it. So yeah, it's just becoming the person I want to become, and becoming the father I want to become to my future kids. That's a big driving point right now for me.
God bless, man. Hey, everybody, reach out to Dan. I'll leave his all his information in the show notes. But I have been so honored to have you on Awaken Nation today, my friend. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Oh, well, I'm not going to let you go just yet. I have a lightning round here at the end where I ask you 3 questions so my audience gets to know you better.
Sweet.
And you ready? Let's get started.
Let's do it.
Number one, what drives you, Dan?
Growth and contribution to my future family. I don't know if you want me to go in more depth, but those two
Yeah,
things.
please. It's your
Yeah.
show.
Yeah. So going back to the point I made with just knowing the path that my parents took to get here, to come to Canada, start from scratch, build up a life, and actually be better off than majority of people, that already were born in this situation. It's just more about carrying the torch and just developing the wisdom and experiences that I need right now to provide a better life for my future family so I can spend time with my kids and watch them grow up and actually be a very active parent in their lives. I see my sister and my brother-in-law, the way, the freedom that they have now with their businesses and the amount of attention and time they put into their kids it's so like that's exactly what I want. Um, so yeah, it's about showing them, giving them like a true role model to follow that's there to actually guide them and help them grow up. But it's also for, the selfish reason is just my own growth and fulfillment and just being able to really push the potential and just see what I'm capable of. I've done it multiple times, whether it was hockey or whether it was, with my franchising business or even right now in the online space. Like it's just playing the game of life and just seeing how high you can get.
Yeah. What's my second question is actually what is your favorite memory? The favorite memory that you like to go back to over and over again.
So the first one that pops up to mind is last year, April, so April 2023, me and my girlfriend took a trip around Paris, London, Dubai. Um, I was able to, so she's a social worker, big heart, super patient with people. So I was able to pay I was able to pay for her to come. And I remember one of the most vivid memories that like we both actually have was we were sitting at the Dubai Mall at a place called Hookah. So we're smoking shisha together, and it was nighttime. The Burj was lit up, and there was the fountain show going on. And I don't know what it was. It was just like one of those moments of, I guess, gratitude or reflection of just like holy crap, like I'm all the years of hard work. I'm like, I'm here. I get to share this with the person that I love. So yeah, just like that's one of the most favorite memories I have, and I constantly remind myself is like, if I was able to experience that, what's stopping me from experiencing that memory again, or like on a 10x level? Nothing. It's just time. Like eventually, we're going to be able to create even new memories. So yeah.
I guess it was one of those moments where you wanted to pinch yourself, like, is this real? Yeah.
Yeah.
My third and final question is, your generation gets a bum rap sometimes. If you could share anything with my audience to let everybody know everything's okay, what would you say?
It's hard for me to, actually, it's not that hard. So I would just say that at the end of the day, we all adapt. What you guys grew up with is very different than what we like. I mean, I was born pretty much as soon as phones and TVs and everything started to become mainstream. I was like I was a pretty young kid when, the first iPhone came out. So it's like, it was just ingrained in our sort of, I guess, evolution, if you want to call it that, with my generation, where we were able to adapt, and we're now able to use like the new technology that comes out to, create some kind of innovation or create some kind of change. We might not have the same traditional values at all times, but we still have it within us. Some of those really deep ingrained things and values just don't leave. Eventually, they come up. If you guys got your own kids and whatnot, I feel like eventually they'll become mature enough to realize some of those things. I'd be lying if I said that even now. Sometimes when I'm seeing stuff with like AI or like the Apple Vision Pro, whatever that just came out, and like, I'd be lying if I was saying that I'm not concerned about my future kids and what life they're gonna live. But at the end of the day, like, as humans, we're designed to adapt and evolve, and that's just what we're going to continue doing.
Way to end the show, my friend. Ladies and gentlemen, Dan Bagniuk. And reach out to him. You want to up your copy, want to reach people. We're talking the real deal here. Just reach out to him. And thank you, Dan, for being on Awakened Nation. I appreciate it.
Thank you for having me on.
You bet. Hey, everybody, don't forget to tune in next week. We'll have another astounding guest here on Awakened Nation. Until then, bye-bye for now. Thank you so much for being a big part of the Awakened Nation movement. This is how you can help me and our extraordinary guests. If you guys enjoyed this episode, please like and subscribe and share this episode out on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. And let's grow this movement by word of mouth. Our success is because of you. Thank you, and see you next week.